All right, let's get started. So today's icebreaker, it's not a, well, it's kind of a question. So I'm going to give two things that are comparative in some way, and your job is to pick the one you like, and toss out the other one, and then add something to it and pass it to the next person, see what they choose. So I'll start, and I'm going to say, give Cat, writing for Green Cat, a choice between waffles and pancakes. So, and then Cat, pass it back to me. We'll do a quick demo. So, what, Cat, waffles or pancakes?
Waffles. Aaron, pancakes or
Wait a second.
tennis?
You just chose waffles. You're gonna stick with waffles.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
All right, maybe I should choose some
I
both of
got
them.
too excited.
All right, let me
Okay,
start again.
Aaron.
Cat.
Waffles. Yeah, waffles or tennis?
Oh, okay. Um, Katie, tennis or snorkeling?
Tennis. But I do like to play tennis. How about Tracy? T I stick with tennis, right?
Yeah, the one you chose,
Okay.
and then you can anything else to go with it.
Okay. Tennis or how about knitting?
Oh boy. All right, Alfredo. So what am I doing? Knitting or I gotta pick one. Knitting. Okay. So Alfredo, knitting or fishing?
Fishing. So
Dave, Mighty, Margaret, Nicole.
Dave, fishing um or diving.
I'll do fishing. Um, Nicole, diving or cleaning up a beach.
I will pick diving since I haven't done that in a while. Maite, diving or hamburgers?
Diving, but I came late, so I don't know what we're doing.
So then you pick Margaret and you say diving or, and then you just add another word for her to pick between.
Okay, Margaret, diving or um buffalo wings.
Let's assume she's not quite ready yet. Uh, Cat from Alaska Cat hasn't gone, I don't think.
I will choose diving over buffalo wings. Is that everybody then?
All right, I'm back. I'm sorry, I just couldn't figure out.
Oh,
I'm
Okay.
I'm I'm mobile today and not for
oh, that's
very
right.
long. So I'm sorry. So the choices between wait, Kat, did you just
Oh,
pick
here,
buffalo
I'll give
wings?
you a new one. Diving's still there, but diving or kittens.
Ooh, I have to pick diving. I'm not a cat fan. So I think then I'm the last one,
She
right?
had her. Yeah, that was too easy for you. You knew right away that you're a cat hater. So
That's how I was
Yeah,
figuring
there's
we have a cat hater among us. How do we all feel about that? I don't know. Now my whole
uh,
impression of Margaret has changed. That she hates
I
cats.
know. I do. But
Kittens, no less.
oh no. Yeah, sorry.
That was a jump. We don't know actually that you in fact hate kittens. Just you prefer diving over kittens. So whatever it was. All right.
True.
So today's session is one of my favorites because it's something that drives me crazy. So Cat knows. So I enjoy helping other people improve, and this is an area of writing that is hugely important. Maybe there's no other thing that's more important. Not even having a great plan, not even knowing the person you're applying to for a grant, and the problem is ambiguity. And typically, in almost all cases, ambiguity is a terrible, terrible thing to incorporate into your writing, to have in your writing. whether you're writing anything, email to a colleague, a grant proposal, a case for support, an annual report, a letter to your board, whatever it is, just think about the consequences if whenever someone misinterprets something that you say. And you can think of this not just in writing, but in any conversation you had, probably in a conversation between yesterday and today, you said something to someone and they misinterpret it and you're like, what the hell, right? And maybe it's because you were not clear enough in the communication to them. But either way, whatever the cause, that ambiguity leads to some disconnect, which can have snowballing effects. It may or may not have longer term implications, but it does have an immediate effect on whatever you're doing. If you're not able to communicate what you have to say in a very clear, explicit way, then it typically leads to problems. Before we get into that, let's do a quick recap of the last lesson, which was about, what was it about? Don't tell me, it's going to come to me.
I'm waiting for someone in the group to tell you.
Yeah, that's part of the exercise, right? Is to try to see if you guys remember what it was about. No, I know it was about discovery interviews. So takeaways from that, anything that's kind of really stuck with you from our conversation, from our session a couple of days ago? And a point of interest, I actually conducted a discovery interview with Dave yesterday. Interview sounds so formal, but that's always what I revert to when I'm talking to someone. And so Dave and I live, work, whatever, like real close to each other. So I was literally in the building next to him yesterday. So I stopped by and saw Dave, which was pretty awesome, and get a chance to learn more about his project. So Dave was probably like, why do we have to do an interview? But it was fun. We talked about his stuff and he asked me about what I was doing. So anything that comes to mind that sticks with you from our conversation from Monday?
I did a discovery interview before this, and we talked for a little, it was a half an hour meeting. We talked for a little while about how sick the other lady was that I was talking to and why she hadn't responded. And it just made me think, sort of our conversations about the rapport, like that doesn't necessarily need to be something forced. Like if she starts talking about how sick she was and all that, you can like go with that. But, people were saying like, how long should it be or what should it talk about? And I kind of joked about the weather, but I feel like it's like if it's naturally happens, just go with it, but don't force it.
Yes, you're not going to be like, hey, what kind of ailments do you have? But
yeah, or do you like pancakes or waffles better or what, like purposely doing stuff like that. But
right.
yeah.
Are you calling us out for the first exercise?
I love the icebreakers, so I'm not saying anything bad about those, but don't force it, I guess, and just do with what happens naturally. If they're like, "Oh, we just want to get right to business because I got to go somewhere," then there's maybe time for rapport later.
Yeah. That's a good point, because if you know where someone's at, where their head's at, it's going to help your conversation. It shows that you care, and it establishes a little bit of trust for that, even if it just lasts for that conversation. Other stuff?
So something I didn't do before yesterday was the importance of preparation and kind of thinking about questions ahead of time and doing a little background research before you talk to somebody.
So when you found out I was coming, did you go to SaunderstownGarlicFarm.com and look at the history of my farm and how many rocks I pulled out of the field and all that?
That's what I mean. I should have done that, but I didn't do anything and you disappeared.
That's all right. I just showed up unannounced. Yeah, it is really important if you know what you want to get out of a meeting with somebody, and it doesn't mean you have to like have a list of 1,000 questions. It's in your mind, know what you want to accomplish, and that may inform steps that you take to prepare for that meeting, just like looking up someone's LinkedIn or whatever. So you have something to talk about, and you have maybe generate some more questions to ask based on that limited research. Other stuff?
Well, you guys teed me up for this, but I was going to say it anyway, is that to approach it with openness, that you're probably doing the interview for your own purpose, but you might actually find that through the interview, another door opens or another opportunity. So be open to receiving those sort of diversions or detours.
Yeah, that's a great point. Having a set of questions or just goals that you want to get out of the conversation, but not being so rigid that you're not leaving any room to go off into some tangents, which may actually prove to be more important than what you came to talk about to begin with. And that's a attribute of any good journalist is going to be able to do those things. I think that's a great point. Katie?
On the flip side of that, what do you do if the conversation does detour to a direction that is not useful or helpful? How do you reel them back in?
Yeah, I think that's something to look out for. I think being aware of that is important, and you have to be comfortable redirecting the conversation. And that's something that just takes practice and a little bit of tact. And sometimes it's just easier to be like, well, that's really interesting. We only have a limited time. I just have a few more questions to ask you about this. So I can't give you any specific instructions per se for that. I think being aware that that's happening and being willing to redirect the conversation is the most important part. I think you'll find a way to do it.
Yeah, and if I could just add one more thing from the practice that Kat and Soul did, where she kind of was just like boom, boom, like one after another. It's you want to you probably have an agenda, which is why you made the meeting. But also, if it's about like how you can collaborate, you got to give the other person a chance to see if you're a good fit, also, not just going with your whole agenda.
Yeah. So how many people, probably everyone has been in a conversation. Maybe it's someone interviewing you, so you want to give some deference to that person, and they're just going on and on and on. And you're like, this is great. This is going along great. They're talking about themselves, but you're going to realize soon enough that when you get off the call, they're not going to know anything about you. And if you're interviewing for a job, for example, and you don't make the time, the space for you to share something about yourself and your skills, then it was kind of a waste of time. So, and I think a great way to do that, two things, is to have a goal in mind, know what you want to get out of that meeting, and to incorporate a very simple tactic, which is paraphrasing. That's a great non-intrusive way where you can interject without seeing like, oh, can you stop there for just a second? Because I want to just repeat back what you just said to make sure I understood it, because it's so interesting, even if it's not. It's like, wow, that was really interesting. Let me just make sure I understand. Sometimes I'll even say, sorry, I got to stop you there because you're giving me so much information. I just can't absorb it that fast. So I want to ask you a couple questions just to make sure that I'm getting everything you're saying. You don't have to be clever. Sometimes I'll say it just like that because I can't think of a clever way to say it. Just like, put the brakes on. I have some follow-up questions I want to ask before you move on, because the person that's talking is so familiar with the subject matter, they will just go on and on and on and on. And instead of you sitting there and just nodding your head and just being like, I'm not going to remember any of this, it was not going to benefit you or them, just pause the conversation for a second. And there's nothing wrong with that. I find that's a very effective strategy for me to learn what I need to get out of it.
I was just going to add that going through the lesson again, I was thinking about how much those skills, those conversation skills, apply to so many factors beyond an interview, just building friendships, having a conversation. All of these things are great interpersonal skills to incorporate into everyday life. An example I was thinking of, this training would be so good for HR, giving interviews. This is a great way to interview folks before joining on your team and making sure you're offering input and insight from individuals potentially coming into your organization. So I was just thinking there's so many ways that this process could be applied beyond what we're teaching for grant writing.
Yeah, because you can probably think one thing, there's something that drives me like so crazy. It's when I'm talking to someone and they just go on and on and on there, and I'm just driving me crazy because they're not asking me anything. They're just talking about themselves or their interest. And to me, it makes me tune out. And it even if they're a great person and they have something great to share, I'm now incorporating some bias into my perception of them because I don't feel like they're being a good conversation partner. So there's a way for you to address that if you're the person that's being kind of talked at by incorporating some of these things like paraphrasing, asking questions back, and also being aware that it's going to help you to be a better conversation. If you find yourself talking and you're like, I've been talking for 4 minutes, I haven't asked this person anything, and a great way for you to get someone to open up is to ask them about themselves. Ask them specifically about something that you know they're interested in. I was talking to Dave a lot about fishing. I don't know anything about fishing, but I'm just like, Dave, tell me about the clams. He's like, and he was happy to tell me, and it was interesting for me, and it helps us make that connection. And eventually, he asked me about the garlic. Dave actually had a lot of questions about the garlic. He was very intrigued. So we had a great conversation yesterday. So I think that's a good summary. And just to summarize our summary, be paraphrase, ask open-ended questions, going to the interview or the conversations. We don't even call it interview, conversation with an open mind. Have a plan, but don't be so rigid that you're going to close off potential opportunities to build a relationship and to get the information you need. And just be aware of these techniques. And simply being aware of them is going to make you better at it as you continue to do it. Okay, so for today, today's objectives are all related to ambiguity. We want you to leave here having understanding how to recognize ambiguities in your own work and the works of others, how to ameliorate ambiguity to get it out of the stuff that you write and help others to do the same. And that's basically it. and actually get some practice in. So, and in terms of the agenda, after this baseline conversation, just kind of getting on the same page like we always do, we'll do a couple of group exercises. We're going to break up into pairs to do kind of workshop some written works that are really awful, really awfully written. Just to, a lot of times developing a skill, it's helpful to look at the extremes, something that's really good or something that's really bad. Because I'm a negative person, I always like to look at the really bad stuff. So we'll do that. I'm joking, okay? Cat's like, he's not joking. So, and then for the majority of the session, you will spend some time helping each other workshop stuff that you've written. So you're going to take turns looking at something that your partner wrote, looking at it through the lens of ambiguity. Is this clear? How could this be improved? Not the substance so much in terms of the technical substance, but is it clearly written? Is there room for misinterpretation of something you wrote? And so hopefully you all, plan A is that you all brought something. I know, and there's no plan B because I know you all have written, you've all written a lot of stuff, and all we're asking you to do is to come with something you've written that's about a page, could be an excerpt of something. So just have it handy in a written form, a Word doc or Google Doc or whatever that you can share when we get to that point in the lesson. All right, next slide, please. So can I have a volunteer to read this, please? This statement? Not Nicole, because Nicole always volunteers.
I'll read it.
I'm just kidding. No, if you want, you can. Okay, Tracy.
The objective of today's course for people in your community is to learn to be better communicators, because if you don't write clearly, they won't understand what you are trying to accomplish.
Okay, so what do you all think about this? What's good about this, if anything? What could be better in terms of something that's written clearly and with or without ambiguity?
Well, it says to be better communicators, but that communication can take a lot of formats. So it does say if you don't write clearly. So I'm assuming it's specifically talking about writing, but maybe not because it doesn't really specify that. So that would say that's one sort of ambiguity. What kind of communication are we talking about?
Yep, Dave. That's a great observation, Katie.
What kind of community? Like people in your community, but what is that?
Yeah, community could be a lot of different things. It could be a virtual community, could be a community based on geography or some other type of attribution, some other type of attribute, other stuff.
I don't know what that's called, but I don't think you start a sentence with because. Is that, I remember learning that like in
I think,
fifth grade or something, preposition or some, whatever that's
yeah,
called.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm a really good writer, but I can't tell you like what conjugation means. Okay, I don't know
Yeah.
any of the like English terminologies.
Yeah.
You're right. Although on
It-
rare occasions I will start a sentence with and.
Yeah.
Not very often, but once in a while. But yeah, it
Yeah,
doesn't
'cause
really work.
I think for me it's like you expect something before the because, and it's weird when it's at the beginning of a sentence.
Yeah, should be. So that's clause should be part of something else probably. So it doesn't really fit there.
So my initial thought was that the statement was pretty threatening. It's, if you don't do this, this is going to happen. And so, but that's not ambiguous. But what is ambiguous is, what does it mean by clear communication? Like, you're not giving
Mhm.
any sense of that. That could mean anything.
Yeah, there's a lot of things here that are open for interpretation.
Yeah.
I mean, even sorry, Kat, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Dave brought up a great point about being specific about the community, but I find that issue even more glaring in the second statement when it just says, because if you don't write clearly, they won't understand. It's like, who is this they?
Mm,
Yeah.
that's a great point. Who is the they? Does anyone know? That I'm pretty sure is a pronoun, they. So, and that's a very common source of ambiguity is when you're not sure who or what the pronoun is referring to. That's a huge thing. Like we don't know if it's a person, it's an institution, it's an organization, it's an individual or a group of people. Like all that affects the meaning of the sentence. Let's go to the next example, and then once we look at that one, we'll make some generalizations. All right, can I have a volunteer to read the second one? Nicole, you can read it if you want to.
I'm really sensitive about this specific issue and talking too much. So if I am, I would really like to know, but I'm happy to read this right now.
Well, let me just say, Nicole, that you don't talk too much. You were just very willing to volunteer. So that's not a
I
bad
normally wait like at least 15 seconds to see if somebody else says something
And-
first, but yeah,
And it's
okay.
nice to have you in the group because I know that you're always the backup. If no
Okay,
one else comes
perfect.
forward.
Great. What some people forget to consider when writing is who their audience is. This is especially important if they are not subject or they are not experts in the subject matter, and it is important that the reader is informed. Oh, this is bad. Because you are limited in what you can achieve if things are not written clearly enough, and if, for example, there is any confusion among various people.
No, you just said, oh man, this is bad. But there's no one here that can tell me that you haven't read something about like this fairly recently.
Yeah, with all the
As recently.
commas. Yeah, and the sentence is a whole paragraph.
So there is something, right? Super long, a lot of commas and stuff. Other stuff. And well, just to dwell on that for a second, what's the issue with when you're using too many clauses, too many commas in a single sentence?
On
I heard a mumble. I'm not sure where it came from.
It's so jumbly and
Yeah, it's like
difficult to
on running.
read.
It just keeps
Yeah.
going and going.
Like I can't even pay attention to what it says because I'm
Right.
so caught up in how difficult it is to read.
And you read this kind of thing in legal documents, right? I think possibly it's because they want you, the reader, to be confused. And technically, from like a technical writing or legal standpoint, it probably is fine, right? But if you want someone to understand it, and you make your sentence too complex, it's easy to lose track of which comma is for which phrase. And there's no semicolons in here. Like a semicolon is a great tool to use because it can separate items in a list in a different way than a comma can. It can also kind of be the second part of a sentence. In terms of just this run-on sentence, what's a very simple thing that could be done to address something like this? I mean, there's other things wrong with it, but how would you potentially fix a run-on sentence?
You could break that first part of it off into its own sentence, and they even have it capitalized. So if you just took the and out and put a period after subject matter.
Yeah. Well, a lot of times if I'm editing or writing my own thing and I find that something is too long or complex, a lot of times it's because the writer, me or someone else, maybe you want it to sound fancy, want it to sound like it's very sophisticated. But usually that's a bad idea. Usually it's better just to say two things in a very simple manner than to say one big long thing in a complex manner that someone is going to misinterpret. And there's nothing wrong with writing at a 6th grade level. It's actually advisable in many cases. Other things?
Could I just say something about this? Totally unrelated, but I just took like a digital marketing class and it was talking about like SEO with, how you get your stuff found with keywords and how that's falling out of favor in terms of like GEO, which is that your stuff shows up in like the AI summary when you Google something. And that is exactly what they suggested, that you just write like short sentences that are easily like summarized by the robot, and then your writing is more likely to show up in the AI summaries, which I thought was really interesting.
I think it's a little bit of a tangent, but I think it's really interesting and a little bit disconcerting how a lot of times the AI version of something, when you type in a question, and you think this is an authoritative assessment of looking at millions of documents, a lot of times they just pull something from a website that says, I'm an expert on this, and they just list that person's stuff. It's like, it makes no sense. But from an SEO standpoint, yeah, I mean, that could be helpful. What about the use of pronouns in this one? Is there anything confusing here? Or subject, the subject. It's another thing that can be confusing, is like, who is a subject here?
Well, I do think that it says their audience. And it says like the reader. So that would be a little bit better than just saying they in the previous one. But then there is a you because you are limited in what you can achieve. So that's, I guess,
Yeah.
you is like the one who is reading this paragraph. So I would say the pronouns are better because the they is specifically said.
So it could be confusing whose perspective is this from, and who is people? Is people just anyone in the world? Is it a specific kind of micro community of some kind? So there's some ambiguity there, I think, as well. So let's make some generalizations out of these two examples. So this kind of distills down to, I guess it's 7 things here, which I think are really key. If you can recognize these things in the things that you write and your team writes and get rid of them, you'll be doing really well. For example, the pronouns. If you're using you or they or he or him or she or whatever, is it clear to the reader what specific person or group of people you're talking about? And if not, just write the community in Dayton, Ohio, or whatever, instead of making a presumption that that person will understand. Using language that's imprecise, not making clear what the subject is that you're talking about. The punctuation is always an issue if you have a lot of long, complicated sentences, particularly with commas, or you're starting sentences with prepositions, whatever, like becauses or and or things like that, right? Things that are just look clunky. A lot of times people will overdo their writing through excessive use of descriptors or adjectives and just try to sound really complicated and sophisticated. And usually that backfires because the reader typically wants to just give them the basics. Unless you're writing literature, you typically don't have to worry about getting a thesaurus out. Just write in very simple terms that you understand, because if you understand it, the reader is probably going to understand it as well. So any questions or observations on these things, or anything else that folks have noticed that you want to maybe add to this list that are kind of sources of or drivers of ambiguity?
Just a comment, because I'm curious how the writing that I was planning on using is our like call to action letter, but it was written with the intent of walking the line and staying educational and outside the line of lobbying. So I'm curious if I should swap it out for different writing. There's purposeful ambiguity in there, but I'm curious if it'll be useful for this measure. Well, not purposeful ambiguity, but purposeful. It was written to walk outside the line of direct lobbying.
I think it's a good term. Actually, one of the things we're planning to discuss later, which we can kind of touch on now, is is it beneficial to use ambiguity in your writing? And that's a good example. If there's an RFP you're responding to, for example, and you qualify and everything, all 10 except for maybe one criteria you're like a little bit short on, you might want to either not address that thing or write something in an ambiguous way so they can't tell if you're a lobbyist. You're not going to lie, you're not going to misrepresent yourself, but in that kind of situation, I'm going to apply anyway, just see what happens, and just not be as upfront about things that as you would for things that you're sure about and you're really strong in. Are there other examples people can think of when using ambiguity in your writing could be a good thing?
I was just talking to my coach about this yesterday, and I went on Grant Station and looked for like funding opportunities, and there's a whole pile of like corporate giving things that they say their priorities are like environmental sustainability, which is like so vague. So then it's like, do I go down in my real serious like plastic waste management thing, or do I kind of stay at a higher level of like this just makes the environment better, kind of, to not, I don't know if scare is the right word, but like not get too into the weeds when they just want to like make the environment better.
Mm-hmm. Any thoughts on that?
I have some thoughts on one. There's like a point where you can educate them on a specific topic through your writing and submission to explain how it contributes to the overall issue. So you can say you're part of this ecosystem that they're working to solve. But in doing so, I think it is smart to look at the way they refer to things and the terms that they use and incorporate those into your writing. So we don't have to be overly scientific. We can use their more vague terminology, but then also give specific, tangible examples on how you help solve the issue they're aiming to solve.
In a way, I think that's almost your example, Nicole, is almost, I agree with what Kat said, is almost an inverse example where they're being ambiguous, telling you to write something. Their instructions are ambiguous to you, and you're responding with precision rather than ambiguity. And you're telling them how what you're doing relates to their ambiguous prompt. So I think
yeah, I guess my question was, should I move away from the precision and be more vague? Because they don't specifically say, like, we care about plastic waste. They say we care about the environment. So can I just say, I'm making the environment better, and be very vague in response to their vagueness?
I'll just give you my 2 cents and then we'll move on. I would think that they're going to be expecting something back that's more specific. They're giving you an ambiguous prompt, but they still want to have something back. Well, this person didn't say how they're going to improve the environment. I think they're leaving it open-ended, so you have the flexibility to respond in the way that makes sense. But I would not just say, we're going to help the environment because you know that, yes, you're helping the environment, but they're going to want to know more than that. I would think they should anyway. So next slide, Kat. And Kat from Alaska, Kat, that's it's a great point, and we can touch on that again a little bit later if you want to circle back to it. That ambiguity is not always bad; it's usually bad, but sometimes if you're intentional about it, it can be helpful. Okay, so someone read this punctuation party. Someone read the first one and tell me how this might be misinterpreted based on the punctuation.
I like the middle one.
Okay, read that one.
Let's eat kids.
What does it say?
Right. If it had a comma after eat, then we're talking to the kids, but it makes it sound like we're going to eat kids.
Literally, that's what you would have to assume. And you can't assume that the reader is going to know where you intend the punctuation to be. Okay, next one. Tracy, which one? Pick one.
Please, no smoking food or beverages permitted in the clinic.
And what does that literally say?
Well, you shouldn't be smoking food.
Which it's true.
Should have a comma. Please, no smoking, eating food or beverages.
No smoking food. No smoking, comma, food
or yeah.
beverage. Yeah. Actually, I don't know. I might have to rewrite that whole thing.
Yeah.
Please, no smoking, comma. Yeah, I don't know. I think this might need to be completely rewritten. I'm not sure we can just put
it should be matching, I think, smoking, eating, or drinking.
Eating or drinking.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
A good way to know if a comma can be used or if it's in the right places is to say the whole sentence as if the comma wasn't there. So if you had please, no, comma, smoking food, comma, or beverages, you would ask yourself, does please no beverage permitted? Take out the phrase that's contained by the commas and ask if that sentence still makes sense. Break out the fragment. And if it doesn't, then you essentially need to rewrite it. There's my very basic English lesson for someone who knows, pretty good writer, but knows nothing about grammar and syntax. Like I couldn't tell you what those things mean. How about the first one?
Should that be a semicolon? My heroes are my parents, Superman and Wonder Woman. Like they're referring to their parents as Superman and Wonder Woman, is my interpretation of that sentence.
Right.
But I don't know how you'd actually write it.
My heroes are my parents.
I think they have three heroes, the parents, Superman, and Wonder Woman. So I think that's actually right.
Or in that, I think there should be probably a comma after Superman. That's called what is it called?
You need an Oxford comma.
Oxford comma. Comma. You like to use a comma before an and because there's no confusion about whether Superman and Wonder Woman go together.
Well, the intent is without the Oxford comma makes it a list. So it's one thing, one thing, one thing. If you only have that first comma, the idea is what's with the and, those two are lumped together. So you would literally be saying, my heroes are my parents, Superman and Wonder Woman. You're naming the parents. Yeah.
Like my parents are Superman and Wonder Woman. That's what that says. So thinking about when you're writing, going back and rereading what you wrote, it doesn't take long. Just to make sure, ask yourself, put it through your grammar filter and ask yourself, does it actually make sense? Could it be misinterpreted?
I have a question about that though, because sometimes when you're writing a piece, you've read it so many times that you can't even catch those things, like because you already know what you're trying to say. So what's the best way to accommodate for that?
Here,
you want to have a suggestion for Katie?
Yeah. In my case, I always have an external person and an internal person read my work. So on a professional basis, I have a colleague always read the work. And then I always want someone who's outside of the organization reading my work to make sure that it would make sense to anyone picking it up. So I generally send all my work to my mom. to get feedback, and she's a grammar police, so it's also helpful.
And you want to choose someone who's objective, who's not just going to tell you all your stuff is great all the time. So, okay, we're going to move on to a short exercise we'll do in pairs. And for this, we're going to take about 20 minutes. We're going to give you two examples. This document is in your course materials folder, lesson. I don't know what lesson number it says, but it's the slang ambiguities one. And you'll see the document Catherine is sharing now. And if you, for some reason, can't get into your course materials folder, Kat will share a link in the chat, and you can, it's view only, but you can download it and open it up in Word, because you're going to need to, we're going to have you write some things in it. Actually, yeah, she didn't share it in the screen, but Kat, share the actual document so we can, people can just see what it looks like. Yep. So I want, in your pair, start with either example 1 or 2. Just read through it. I'll tell you right now, they're not very good, but these are not completely hypothetical. These are based on works that my clients have written. And typically it's something like, oh, this is just about done. I just need you to do a quick proofread of this. And I'm like, oh my God. So look through your ambiguity lens and just jot down some bullet points in the space provided. If there's anything clear about what's written, write it down. Otherwise, make a long list of what you think the deficiencies are in terms of being ambiguous. If you have time to get to the second example, start that. If you don't finish it, that's not a problem. This is just kind of a warm-up exercise. All right. Did anyone make it through both of them? That would be quite a feat. Kat, you want to share your screen? Mm-hmm. Can I have a volunteer? Nicole, you can volunteer. It's perfectly fine, Nicole, if you want to volunteer again. It's all good. So I want to just get a sense of what you all thought of this, what you found ambiguous, if anything. Of course, there's a lot there. And just a reminder, these are actual things that people have written and sent to me, and Catherine is a witness to this, that they thought was really good. So it's not unheard of that you will see something like this, although I don't expect anything at this level to come from any of you. So can I have a volunteer to read just the first 2 sentences? I think that's about all any of us can handle on this for example 1.
I can read it. I think I can read it. As an essential high demand business and leveraging partners for 16 years, providing healthcare and human service education, and to date, we have trained over 433 students. Expanding for educational programs is the best way to maximize increased skills, overcome barriers of employment within our clinics, early learning programs by creating a pipeline.
Okay, so what are some things that you all found, for those of you that looked at this one, that you found to be ambiguous or causing issues? Alfredo?
Oh yeah, like run on complex sentences, lack of punctuations, make it confusing. Like should be keep it simple and
sentence structure, very confusing. Yep.
yes.
And
Others?
we tried to look past that a little bit into more of like the content, but that was really hard. But there's like a ton of acronyms, and you don't really have a sense of like what they are, whether they're, I think we said either like theoretical frameworks, organizations, like what even are all these acronyms? There's just no description of what they are.
What's the general rule of thumb for acronyms?
I don't know
4
what
times and don't make
What
it
do you
up.
mean?
The first time you use an acronym, introduce it. So you write it out in full, and then in parentheses, you put the acronym. Always don't ever assume that someone knows your acronym, because there's not going to be someone who doesn't. Other stuff that was horrendous about this statement.
They don't state who they are. Like who is the high demand business? What's their name? What makes them essential?
Lack
And
of
high demand.
lack of specificity and
Right.
nothing to back up the claims that they make, so no substantiation. Mhm.
There's like an inconsistency of voice through the whole thing. It bounces back and forth, and then passive writing through the whole thing, but also just it goes between first person and not first person.
Yep. The tenses, you want to always keep them consistent. A lot of times it doesn't matter. You can decide to use past tense, present tense, future tense. You can write from a first person perspective or a third. Really, anything that you establish as the standard for that work can be fine, but just be consistent about it. Anything else?
There's also a lot of context missing, like what model they're referring to, what license they're referring to, the equipment that they said they're utilizing. They just mention things, but they don't really describe how they're related.
Yeah, great point. And that can root back to assumptions. So that writer is implicitly making assumptions that the reader is going to be in the same place that they are. They're going to know all the background information intuitively, so they don't have to explain it. And that's a fatal error oftentimes when you're writing. Just like you're looking at this from an outsider's perspective. When you're writing, you should be writing from that perspective, thinking through the lens of someone who's not familiar with your work and your organization. And that's going to help you write in a more clear and unambiguous manner. Anything else? Maybe one more point here. Okay, let's go on to the next one, Kat. And can I have actually pull up the case study there? Can I have a volunteer to read first two sentences here?
Yeah. Our innovation addresses problems of energy poverty by distributing cost-effective, efficient, affordable, and sustainable solar business kits to increase access to the deprived populates in sub-Saharan Africa, particularly Senegal. We anticipate a wide adoption of our product line because of our unique business model, comprehensive distribution strategy, proprietary technological devices embedded in our fit for purpose solar powered kiosk that enables machine to machine communication, handling, and it goes on. And IoT, these intelligent devices are modular but strategically placed in already earmarked locations, each kiosk acting as a connection point to about 350 homes. It's cheaper and can bypass conventional infrastructure. That was the first sentence.
It's a first, so it's a good thing. He didn't even get to the second one. It's a good thing Alfredo can hold his breath for a long time. He was clearly the right person for that job. Okay, what do we notice about that one?
It's a run-on sentence that doesn't make any sense.
One whole sentence.
Well, they're just trying to put every piece of information into the very first sentence. Like, I feel like, and I feel like I can say this because my son's an engineer. I feel like this was written by an engineer, like somebody who's like, here's everything about this thing, and you figure it out.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like a technical person, whether it's a scientist or just someone in a specialized field, doesn't even have to be technical. You are just assuming that someone can absorb everything you know in a very quick period of time. So you also have to think as sort of I guess maybe from a teaching perspective when you're writing, like what is it going to take for this person to understand this, and how do I present the information in a way that's sequenced and logical, so they're going to get the point that I want to deliver to them. So a lot of information and a lot of like fancy words that strung together that don't make sense, that maybe they're just thinking if I use a bunch of fancy words, it's going to make me look like I know what I'm talking about, but I don't think it accomplished that.
Well, and that's just it, is they might make sense, but the way they have them organized in this doesn't make sense to someone who doesn't know all of this information, right? So that's like the translation that needs to happen.
Yeah. So the takeaway from these two examples, I haven't seen anything from any of you, and I don't think I ever will, that looks anything like this. But I think it's helpful to look at these extreme examples. So you're thinking through the lens when you're writing, okay, how can I be even more clear than I am? Who is my audience? Where are they at in terms of their understanding about the subject matter, about my organization, about these acronyms that I may or may not use? How do I need to lay out the information so that it's going to be crystal clear for them? And can I say this in a simple way, in a simpler way, and using sentence structures that are very basic, right? You don't have to worry about, they're going to judge you on your track record and the substance of what you write rather than the complexity of your sentences. They just want to understand what it is you're writing. And I'm talking about whether I'm someone reviewing a grant or someone that's reading your annual report or whatever. If you, especially if it's something you're not being forced to read, if it's not making sense to you right away, what do? You just toss it, right? You're not going to go back for a second look. So that's your job as a writer, to think through that lens. So we're going to split up into pairs again. We can use, we'll do different pairs this time, I think, for the heck of it, or triads for that group. And so you all, hopefully both of you in each pair or three group will have your own work that you want reviewed. So this is a chance for you to get feedback on something you wrote, and a chance for you to give feedback and think through that lens of how could this thing be written more clearly. And this is a very kind of applied way for the things that we've just been discussing, a way to apply those principles. If there's anyone here that doesn't have their own thing ready to share, you're like, I don't want to share mine. I mean, I encourage you to share it, but for some reason you can't share something that you wrote, then you can just focus on whoever does have something. Spend all your time on that one. Workshop it. You can either just give each other verbal feedback, or if you feel like it's helpful and want to share links to your Google Doc or whatever, you could take turns writing comments or spend some time editing each other's stuff using track changes. So do what you think is going to be helpful to improve your product and to give you a chance to give that feedback and to assess work written by someone else. So you kind of, those skills become more ingrained. Any questions on that, Nicole?
Could you give us the ability to share our screens in the breakout rooms?
Yep, sorry about that.
Okay, and also I have to leave in 15 minutes, so whoever gets put in a group with me is going to get shafted for part of it.
Oh, shafted, that's a nice way to put it. So extreme. So put you in the group of three. Put her in the group of three, Kat. So no one gets shafted too badly. So how was that? Let's have a couple people just volunteer to share what it was like. Did you get some useful feedback? Did you see things from a different lens? Did you learn from actually looking through that lens and giving feedback to someone else?
I did. I used a letter from 2019 that I had wrote to Legal Seafood's CEO and president, and just working through with Katie, we just totally picked it apart. And it was, I mean, it sounded good, but it was the way I had it set up and structured, and too many acronyms and things like that. So now I'm going to rewrite it now.
Okay. Again, so the acronyms were maybe added to some confusion. Were there any other elements that created some ambiguity?
Well, I don't know if it's ambiguity, but one of the things was, I said, like, our goal for this campaign was to raise 200,000, right? But then to date, we had secured 99,000, and I went on to tell them who I got what from. Like, I got 50,000 from MET and 25,000 from the Davis Conservation. So we weren't sure if that was like a good idea to demonstrate that, because it shows initiative and people are interested. Or if I didn't mention it, would they have given me the whole 200,000? Do you know what I mean? That was another thing that we had brought up. And what else? Oh, and Kat said, which was a really good one, that I should have started out with presenting to the president and the CEO of Legal Seafoods, and why, like why he's involved and why I'm reaching out to him, and started it out with that as opposed to as a part of an ongoing commitment.
Yeah, like inviting him to be a part of the solution.
Right, inviting him to be a part of the solution.
Versus just, here's the problem, and we need your money to solve it.
Yep. Great feedback. And what was it like to give that kind of feedback. Katie, was it difficult to give critical feedback to Tracy?
I don't think so, because interestingly what we were talking about is that, so this letter was written in 2019, and like Tracy immediately was able to recognize the issues with it herself. And so we were just remarking on like the growth that shows for her in her writing and her like understanding of how best to present her case. And so I think it was very like empowering, I would imagine, for Tracy to be like, oh, look at how much better I am now than
I think I was picking it apart and Katie agreed.
Yeah, well, it's good to be able to look at your work critically. All those things are coming together that we talked about, like the elevator pitch, telling your story, having data in there, thinking about a strategy when you're messaging a funder, all that kind of stuff. Dave, what was your experience like with Mighty?
Really appreciative of, so I shared a summary page of a proposal that we're working on. So it was kind of what we're doing and then what are the objectives. And, Mate really helped improve that a lot. I think the biggest thing was clarifying the language in certain spots so it was maybe less technical and easier to understand. And then we started with like five objectives, but then in going through it, realized there's only really three, and some of the objectives weren't separate. So we collapsed it and clarified it a lot. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah. So sometimes having too much information can either cause redundancy, which can cause some confusion among the reader because they're trying to think maybe these are independent or interrelated in some ways when actually it's just a complete overlap. So having extra stuff in there is not helpful. It may lead to confusion among the reader. Mighty, how did you feel giving feedback to Dave?
I think it was nice. We went in deep with the words and the order of the sentences as well. And sometimes that can be nitpicky, but sometimes that just clarifies the content that you're trying to say. But it was good. I had a lot of context at the beginning as well. But you get to know a lot of what the person writing was thinking when they wrote it. When you're like a third person outside of the context, there were questions that I asked them because I didn't understand where that particular word or element that he wanted to add to the paragraph came from. So that was a good conversation.
So you can see how important it is to have someone looking at your work who is critical, either an outsider or someone from the inside of your organization who is direct and not afraid to tell you what they really think. And I was observing Maite giving the feedback, and she was doing a great job, respectful but very direct. She was upfront when she thought something was confusing. If it's confusing to you as an objective third person reviewing someone's writing, it's probably going to be even more confusing to someone who has no connection to that person whatsoever. Alaska Cat, what did you guys talk about?
I think we looked at mine first, I think. Oh no, we looked at Nicole's first, but for mine, I caught just like on a quick read, I caught a bunch of my own stuff, but then it was pretty helpful for me, the things that I didn't catch. But as soon as it was pointed out to me, it was obvious. We were using an organizational document that I'd written a while ago, but we're kind of like repurposing and reusing now. So it was, yeah, I think in all of our examples, we all had kind of passive voice in there that was not necessarily obvious to the author. So that was, just easy fixes. And then when going through Nicole's, there was a little bit of jargon that we were able to fix. And then Alfredo was in the group too. And his though, I guess the only things that stood out as far as like ambiguous or things that might not be obvious to the reader if you didn't know the issue in depth, but there were a couple areas where in his he had some specific things that were specific to the RFP he was responding to. So it kind of made sense that like maybe it was a long run on list or some specifics, but it was in there for a purpose.
Yep. Okay, great. Kat, can you put the survey link in the chat, please? So if there's one thing I want you to take away from my perspective, it's to find an ally, like a writing ally, a writing buddy, whatever you want to call it, even with someone here who you can go to get critical, objective feedback. Because that's the one thing that is probably going to help you more than anything else is trusting someone else and listening to the feedback. And it's going to help you, especially with the knowledge you have, not just from this lesson, but everything that's led up to it, combined with hearing someone else's perspective on your communication material is going to help you really, really improve, because it shows that you're willing to, it's going to enable you to be responsive in a way that will make your material more clear and more effective overall. So while you're completing the survey, I'll just give you a quick rundown on the last 2 sessions. Can you believe it's already like the 18th or 19th session? Wow, it went by fast. So we got 2 more sessions left. Monday is, we're going over the budget narrative. Sam's going to lead that session. And I wouldn't say it's highly technical, but it's very specific to a budget narrative that you would include in a grant proposal. So connected with all the stuff we've done before, your budget, your narrative, all that stuff, talking about alignment between the stuff, how much detail should you go into in your budget narrative, et cetera, et cetera. And then our final session on next Wednesday, the 11th, will be kind of a closeout session. So we'll do something to celebrate and with each other. And we also have our external evaluator, Stacy, will be here to do focus groups with you all. So we'll do a post-training survey, which matches the pre-training one we did. And then the focus groups, which I think I'm really looking forward to hearing the feedback that you all have, but I think you all will also really enjoy it, because I told her to expect a lot of questions about the process, because you'll get to see how, from an inside perspective, how an evaluation works and some specific methods. So the focus group, how do you structure? What kind of questions do they ask? What kind of, how do you ask the questions to elicit a genuine, truthful response? And, you know, all that stuff, I think you really not only enjoy, but benefit from. So it also is, in addition to being that evaluation, therefore it also is sort of an intervention or a learning opportunity as well. So I hope you all have a great rest of the week and weekend. Kat, do you have any other things to announcements or anything?
I think just a reminder about making up sessions. If anybody wants any support or to connect with us on any sessions they missed, based off the recordings they're watching, or if anybody needs a refresher on which sessions they did miss, we're making a chart of that and can help you out. So if you want to reach out to make sure you get your certificate of perfect attendance, we're here for you.
Yeah, we are going to issue certificates, but it will only be for everyone who has either attended every session, either in person like we are now, but we also have a makeup mechanism. So if you watch the video and have a quick recap with us, so we can help fill in any gaps, then that will count as attending that session as well. So try to keep a high standard. And obviously, if you don't want to come or you can't come or whatever, that's, you know, there's no penalty involved. But we would like to see everyone get as much benefit out of this as possible. Did anyone else have any announcements or anything they want to share? And it is 3:02, so you are free to go once you're done with your survey.